Awesome. All right, we're on. Hi,
Hey,
Chris.
Jack.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
Chris, we're three people tonight.
I know what's happening.
What's going on? What's
We're being
changing?
joined by somebody
My
else.
screens are all over the place here. Tonight we have the pleasure of having a third guest. We are in the company. I will actually let you introduce our lovely guest this evening. And super excited about tonight.
Yeah, sounds good. Today's topic is about mortgage planning. And so today we have a special guest, and her name is Raluca Antoanela Gheorghiu, Mortgage Development Manager for National Bank. And I asked Raluca to join us so that we can have an in-depth or a brief overview about what it is to plan for a mortgage, because ultimately it's a necessary evil or benefit, in fact, when we're looking at an investment property. So I've known Raluca since the 6 or 7 years that I've been doing real estate, and she has never steered me wrong. She is the utmost professional person, bubbly individual, and I absolutely love doing business with her. She always gives me good advice. So Raluca, welcome to Real Life Money.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. Hello. It's such a pleasure to be with you guys.
Thanks for being with us, Raluca.
As you might have guessed, I'm Romanian, but in Canada since 2001. So I speak Romanian, French, and English. I love traveling, experience life in new places. I love hiking, being in nature, and I'm highly interested in health and well-being. On the professional side, I have a bachelor degree in finance, and I've been working for 20 years at National Bank. My passion for people and the joy I have experienced seeing them realizing their dreams, one being the purchase of a property, led me to a mortgage specialist position where I am today and happy to stay. Great.
That's awesome.
Thank you for the introduction. It's true, you've been 20 years at National Bank, which is quite a long career in finance. So you've really seen all aspects of the financial sector with this bank particularly. And so now you're doing your ultimate objective, which was mortgage specialist. And so on a day-to-day, you build files and you follow them through up until they get approved, which is our famous mortgage letter that we receive when we can lift the condition of financing when we have an accepted offer, and you continue with the client right up until their mortgage gets dispersed at the notary. And so it's a very, very important role, especially for any part of real estate. I'm so thankful to have mortgage specialists like you that I can look toward for advice and also to approve the mortgages that I put on your lap or on your desk.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah,
thank you.
Well, and thank you for sharing all those personal details, because obviously, you know, the focus of this conversation is not just money. It's not just investing. It's people. And I think, you know, it's important that we get to know who you are. And obviously, you know, this is real life money. So this is talking a lot more about, you know, life, about family, about business, about investing, about real estate, and everything that kind of encompasses that. And I think the fun part is that we've decided we've been doing this now for quite some time, but we get to do these conversations over a great glass of wine, and that I will drink, and cheers to that, ladies. So great to be on the call with you both.
It's so nice that Raluca is here with us today, because I mean, we always have a blast together, Jack, when we have our conversations, but now we get to pick Raluca's brain to sort of give us the insight on mortgage planning.
For sure. And I think, you know, just kind of going back to the scope of these conversations is that ultimately, you know, we want to help people understand the ins and outs of how, you know, life, money, real estate, it can all kind of like gel together. And tonight's discussion is, you know, the continuation of our last conversation, which was a lot more focused on, you know, real estate planning. And you helped us really understand the various options, and I know it was important that we touched on quite a few of them, but there's a lot of different real estate investing type of options that investors can choose from, and we wanted to also facilitate the discussion of saying, okay, well, now we recognize the type of investment that perhaps suits us more as an investor, but now, well, how do we actually go out and buy that investment?
Now what do we do?
Now what do we do? And this directly leads into the discussion of, well, we have to mortgage plan. And in advance of the next discussion, we're also going to talk about budgeting, and I think that's going to be a great conversation as well. But this is a super important conversation, and I think as a financial advisor myself, it's imperative that these debt management type of conversations be had with professionals like Raluca, excuse me, that can facilitate the conversation. So, I know you prepared a great agenda for us tonight, Chrys. So looking forward to you rolling that out. Once you've done that, I'll talk a little bit more about the wine, and we'll kick off tonight's discussion. So what do you have in store for us?
So we are going to pick Raluca's brain about mortgage planning, where this conversation is completely about mortgage planning. So essentially, we want to know what is needed to obtain a pre-approval, because a pre-approval is that special ticket that we have in order to determine what is the budget, what can someone afford if they want to get started in investing, whether it's their first investment, their subsequent investments. If they're planning on getting a mortgage, which makes sense, they will have to plan for a mortgage. We're going to talk about different scenarios, what type of properties need what type of down payments, for example, what are the ratios that the banks are looking at, and finally, of course, what type of rates, like variable versus fixed, because those are questions that we get asked so often, and the best person to guide us through that is definitely a mortgage specialist like Raluca. And so on that note, do you want to talk to us about what we're drinking?
Absolutely. Can I get a little Vanna White rollout of the bottle of wine, please?
You can.
Awesome. So today we are in Napa Valley, and we are drinking something that I don't drink a lot of, but I'm always excited when I do drink them. We are drinking a Cabernet Sauvignon from the Duckhorn winery. This is actually their wine Decoy. It's their I'm thinking of the word in French, la gamme, but it's their product line called Decoy, where they make multiple different wines. And this is their Cabernet Sauvignon. And this is just a true ode to a very classic, very pure expression of Cabernet Sauvignon from California. Spoiler alert, there is a little bit of Merlot kind of sprinkled in there, not a very big amount, but I think you definitely feel it on the palate, which makes it very, very, very appealing. This is just a luscious, ripe expression of blackberries, cherries, dark chocolate. There's sweet spices in there. There's a beautiful amount of vanilla, but just well placed. I find it's not overly present. It's obviously brought on by the oak aging that this wine does. There's only a small percentage of the wine that's aged in oak, so it's very well integrated into the wine. And I think I'm picking up some slight nuances of mint and green pepper on the mint. Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah, very, very discreet, but it's for me, it's very, very
pepper.
Yeah, a little bit of like roasted green pepper.
Oh my God, your descriptions are always so, like, I guess I want to say descriptive, but it doesn't make sense. Like you're illustrating like a painting for us. It's funny.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, it's important that I verbalize what we're smelling for the viewers at home, because they're maybe or maybe not drinking a glass of wine while they enjoy this episode. But all that to say that it's very aromatic, and it's definitely a wine that opens up as you integrate more oxygen into it. So I recommend that. I recommend this with caution if you're doing it around a computer, but just swirl it around a little bit, integrate some oxygen in there, and really appreciate the nose for what it is. And you'll see that on the palate, it's just this deep, rich, dark expression of black fruit again. This beautiful tannin, but that's what I was saying on the palate. You really sense the Merlot is that it really kind of has this velvet-like finish with a great acidity that really almost has you wanting to go back for a second and third sip.
That's
definitely a wine. that we're enjoying all on its own, but definitely a wine that I would say if you really want to truly enjoy it for its full potential, sit down, have a great piece of meat, potentially something barbecued. It's definitely a wine that needs to stand up to something. It's not necessarily something you're just going to want to drink for a cocktail party kind of thing. But yeah, that's what we're drinking tonight. So enjoy, ladies.
It was a great recap.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. So for everybody that's new to our conversations, I am going to remind everyone, we're 3 people talking about life, talking about investing, talking about money. But I just want to remind everybody that this is us shooting the shit in a very casual manner. This is not to be misconstrued as specific advice. We're talking about concepts, we're talking about ideas, but we strongly recommend that if anybody has questions, if anybody has any intentions of taking action on any of the concepts that we are talking about in these discussions, that they seek professional guidance. I am a financial advisor. Chrysanthia is a residential real estate broker, excuse me, and Raluca is a mortgage specialist. So we are a team of professionals, and we recommend that all individuals seek professional help because it's the best way to go. So without further ado, let's dive right in.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're going to talk about the pre-approval process, what is needed. But first, I want to talk about why do you need a pre-approval? In fact, a pre-approval reassures the listing broker. It reassures the seller when me, as a real estate broker, can go and present an offer. So, of course, it's necessary because you want to make sure that you're shopping for the right amount. But at the same time, it's also going to justify the price that you're offering when the real estate broker who is representing you as an investor or as a buyer is going to go and present your offer. You've already visited the bank, you've already had your credit checked, and this means that the financing is not going to be an issue. We can lift that condition very easily. The other reason for a pre-approval is because obviously a real estate broker is going to spend a lot of time teaching you and bringing you out on visits, and so it's necessary to reassure the real estate broker that you're actually shopping for something that you can afford. We do spend a lot of time with the buyers, guiding them, teaching them, helping them choose what it is that they want to buy. So we just want to be sure that the buyer that we're working with qualifies for it. So that's why a pre-approval is actually necessary. Also, in a very busy market, we don't want to have any question in the seller's mind that the offer that's accepted is going to be approved with the underwriter. So what I would like to know, Raluca, is in terms of a pre-approval, what is needed? What do we need to obtain a pre-approval? Not just documents, but first I want to know what type of credit, what ratios are you looking at? What are ratios? So go ahead.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So, as Chrysanthia said, all starts with the pre-approval, which is the most important step, the first step. Start for a property. So essentially, a pre-approval, something that will give to a buyer the real amount that they can afford. And Chrysanthia, you ask what kind of information documents we need. In fact, the pre-approval is based on the revenues that a certain person has, and but not only the revenue. We are talking about the down payment that will be taken in consideration for the purchase. The credit history, and their liabilities. So these are like the most important things that we are looking for.
So sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, Raluca, but so if I'm potentially planning on buying a property, let's say with my spouse, and we're getting ready to visit properties, you're going to sit down with us and you're going to look at our revenues.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
You're going to look at our down payment and the sources of those down payments.
Exactly. Super important. The revenues and the source of the revenues. Yes.
Right. Okay. And then, so for example, my wife is employed. I am self-employed. Is there a big difference with those two different types of employment statuses, we'll say?
Yeah, in fact, for a self-employee, we need a consistency in the revenue for at least 2 years, because we're going to ask for the income tax declarations for the last 2 years, and those declarations should reflect the revenue that a self-employee makes normally. For a self-employee, what is particularly what is like different beside the salary is the fact that the self-employed could deduct expenses. So in the end, the real revenue will
it's
be
not the same as the original revenue.
Exactly. So it's important to know that we consider the net revenue, the average net revenue in the last 2 years, and not the gross income.
Okay, so that's a huge nuance between the two types of profiles, because a self-employed individual earns their revenue and then deducts their expenses and then declares earned revenue, and that they would pay tax on that amount, whereas a salaried employee is going to be earning a salary, but their deductions are done directly at source, and then they're living off of whatever is left over.
I didn't know that. That's so interesting. That it's net versus gross in terms of the revenue.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's something a lot of people don't know.
Well,
so
actually,
big nuance.
I don't need to know. I just basically, I'm just like, oh, you want to buy something? Meet Raluca. Get a pre-approval. And then we'll go shopping. Raluca will tell me what's what and talk about the TDS and GDS. And I just want to understand what those terms mean when we're actually planning the pre-approval, because I feel like we've talked about, you know, the debt, paying off debts and that kind of thing. But what does TDS and GDS actually mean when we're looking for the pre-approval?
Yeah. In fact, the GDS means gross debt service, and TDS, total debt service, TDS. So these ratios are called debt service coverage ratios, since they are measuring how much your income can cover your debt and other payments. GDS is specifically linked to the expenses of the property. TDS is linked to the total expenses that the person could have, including the property.
Okay.
Plans to buy. Yeah.
Makes sense. Perfect.
Okay, so now we've determined that we need income sources. We need 2 years of stability on both sides, salaried and self-employed. We need source of down payment. So usually that's proof of savings, whether it's a tax-free savings account, whether it's a checking account. If you're a first-time home buyer, home buyers plan, so we can be utilizing RRSPs, for example. A lot of young buyers these days are receiving gifts from their parents, so that too could be a source of down payment. It could be equity from an existing property, which we'll talk about in other discussions. But ultimately, we know that we want to make sure that other debts are also being taken into consideration. Correct me if I'm wrong, Raluca.
Exactly, yeah. But talking about the source of the cash down, which is also super important when we talk about gifts, because you said that the parents could give some gifts. They are allowed, like the gifts from the parents and from the family. We are talking about brother and sister, grandparents. But when it's a gift from a friend, even a cousin, because this is part of the family, is not considered a source for the cash down.
Oh.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Wow, interesting. Yeah. Interesting nuance. Okay, that's also very good to know.
What about the uncle or the aunt?
The uncle, no.
So let's say somebody does want to invest and they want the cash down from their uncle or aunt. Should the uncle or aunt deposit into their account for a few months in order for it to sort of be legitimate?
Yeah, in fact, when we ask for approve of the cash down, depending where the money are in that moment, because a gift could be done like a few months ago. So in that case, we ask if the money are in the account. We ask for the 3-month statements from that saving account, investment, or an RSP. But if the gift is not transferred at that moment, is considered the gift, and it has to be coming from the parents, grandparents, brother and sisters.
Okay.
I have one more point to put on that is foreign gifts, because obviously we are in Canada, and it's possible that the foreign gifts can be coming from other countries. So I've encountered this in the past where the parents are living, let's say, in a South American country, and they need to transfer a few of their assets in order to bring it all together into one account and then send it all over to Canada. It can take a period of time, obviously. So if the money is not in Canada, can it be considered as a down payment, even if the the day that you're going to go to the notary is going to be in, let's say, 3 months?
In fact, when the cash down is coming from another country, it's mandatory that money to be in Canada on the moment that we are working the file. So giving you the letter, the final letter with the approval, it means that I already verified everything, including the fact
Canada.
Here. Because imagine if, the money are in France, for example, they are from the grandparents, and we have the notary date in 2 weeks, and for reason that money are not in Canada. So the person has the money, but it's not here. So that's why it's really important for the money to be here.
Right.
Okay. That's good.
Good. Yeah, good. Very, very good to know, because then I think ultimately it does have a very direct impact on the choice of investment that an investor is going to be making, because the down payment, I'd like for you to tell us a little bit more about that, but ultimately the down payment is going to be different if you're owner occupying the immovable versus a pure investor where you're purchasing to have that property generate income for you. So we can look at a couple of different examples, but tell us maybe a little bit more about the nuances between being an owner occupied versus being a investor.
There is a big difference between a property that will be bought for as an investment, and the cash down in that case, it's at least 20%. Could be more, but at least 20%. On the other cases, let's say that a person will buy property with the intention to live in that case, permitted to have a cash down less than 20%. We are talking about 5% for condos, single properties, even duplexes.
Right.
And up to 500,000.
Okay. Yeah. So if I'm buying a duplex that I plan on living in, I can put 5% down. Let's say the duplex is $600,000. I would be putting 5% down on the first 500,000, and then would it increase to 10% on that additional $100,000?
Exactly. Only on the additional amount.
Of course. Okay.
500. Yeah, and if we are talking about a triplex or a fourplex, the minimum down payment, it's always 10%.
Even for a fourplex?
Even for a fourplex, yeah.
Okay, so long as you're occupying one of the units in the building.
Yes, super important.
Okay, but if you're not, then got to put 20% down, right?
Minimum 20% down. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, perfect. And I think that's important, and especially that you're giving us that cap on the fourplex, because my understanding, and I think you can shed a little bit more light on this, Raluca, is that anything that is more than 4 doors, so 5 units and above, then changes, we'll call it denomination. It basically falls into the category of commercial lending, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I recognize, and I think you can tell us a little bit more about this, but you are a residential mortgage specialist, and you don't handle commercial files, but please elaborate to the best of your capabilities.
Yeah. Yeah, as you said, I'm not doing commercial mortgages, but as I know, and I heard from my colleagues for commercial, in fact, the approval is based on the rentability of that specific building. So they are calculating the leases, the amount of the leases versus the expenses. And not only that, but they are considering also the profile of the investor. So the revenue are not so important in that particular case. However, they will look at his profile. If this person has in the past any experience like with other properties, or is the first time buying a complex. This is important.
So I feel like an investor has to sort of go through duplex, triplex, condo renting, investing, at least having bought a residential type property before they can be considered generally for a mortgage with commercial.
Ideally, yeah. I'm not saying that it's not possible at all. Require a 5-plex from like the beginning, but ideally it's better to have some experience. Right. And not only because it's a requirement, but I think just like having a 5-plex from the beginning, handling like tenants, maybe
it's what my wife did to me before we got married, is that she wanted to make sure that I had some experience before, and then she was the trophy plex, right? Is that no?
This happened?
I just said it.
What do you mean? What did she do?
Well, she wanted to make sure that I was worthy of being with her.
Well, I need to know, what were her tests?
In 10 years, Chrysanthia, there's
tests every day. What have I done wrong? But I didn't test my husband.
Wow.
I feel like I need to learn.
That's a different conversation, and I'm not part of it. Okay, so we understand now that commercial lending has it's apples and oranges with residential lending. The focus of tonight's discussion is definitely residential, lending, and the ability that an investor has to focus a little bit more on investing. But now that, let's say, we kind of recap, we know what type of investor we're dealing with. We understand the criteria of a pre-qualification. We understand the choice of investment that real estate that real estate investor has made. Let's say we'll call it a 3-plex in this case. Financing is all set. Tell us a little bit more about the impact that the actual mortgage planning part of the process. So we're talking about the rate. We're talking about the amortization period. We're talking about the whether it's a fixed rate or it's a variable rate. How does that kind of factor into the discussion that you're having with your clients?
Yeah, sure. In fact, when we do a pre-approval, or if we do a pre-approval, ideally advise the client to book the rate. And normally we book the rate, especially in these times. We book a fixed rate, for example, but we can also book a variable rate as a formula. We cannot book variable rate, but we cannot book the formula based on that, which is calculated, the variable rate. And that could have like a big impact on the on the final approval, because if somebody has a rate booked like 3 months ago, let's say 4%, ideally, and they will buy in another 3 months, because we can book a rate for a maximum of 6 months.
Right.
So this will have an impact on the payment. The payment
Right.
could be higher or smaller. Also, we are talking about amortization. There's also a big impact on the payment, but not only on the payment, on the amount that somebody will pay total duration of life of that mortgage. So
Right.
if the amortization is longer, the maximum could be 30 years. Of course, that person will pay more interest, but the payment will be smaller.
Right.
So sometimes,
but
it's
in the
good.
case of income properties, from a tax perspective, the interest accrued on the property is deductible from the revenue that the property generates. So it is a tax deduction.
Yeah,
Exactly. So
So
in that case,
is it? Would you say it's a little bit of a lesser? It's maybe less of an important factor of the equation when you're buying for investment purposes, outside of the fact that obviously it impacts the capacity that you can purchase with, but ultimately a buyer, whether it's 4% or 4.25% or 4.5%, it's not really going to change that much, because that ultimately becomes deductible from their revenues.
Exactly. So on the investment properties, maybe it's better to have the 30 years of amortization instead of 25. The rate will be a bit different, a bit higher than based on the 25 years amortization, but is worth it, because the interest amount paid is deductible. So in the end, if the payment is smaller and it allows the person to buy maybe another property after, because they have a smaller payment, in that case, why not?
Right. Right. That's a very good point, because most real estate investors, they get their feet wet with a condo, with a duplex or a triplex, but typically, at least the individuals that we've worked with and work with currently, have a goal in mind, and that's to grow their wealth through multiple units, multiple properties, and that's where you can, over time, if managed properly, if done right, can become, we'll say, financially independent by not necessarily having to work, but have your money working for you and making money for you and putting money back into your pocket, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it is hard work, and it takes careful planning. And I know I berate my clients with this, is that it needs to be done meticulously, and you have to plan, and it has to have a focused approach, but that most definitely can be done if you're willing to invest the time. There is no such thing as quick money. It is a long process, but over time it can create a significant amount of wealth, and it can create generational wealth, because then you can ultimately have that in the family for years to come.
Yeah, for sure. I have a little point that I want to just kind of backtrack on, is the amortization versus the term. So we hear a lot about 5-year fixed, we hear 3-year variable, we hear the word amortization. Could you very briefly describe exactly what those terms mean? Because we really want to speak to the individual that has no experience with mortgages or investment. So I just want to make sure that those terms are defined, so that the viewers or the listeners can really identify with what we're saying here.
Yeah, sure. So it's a very good point. I often have that question from the clients asking me, why you should renew in 5 years? I know I know it's 25. In fact, 25 years or 30 years is the amortization period, is the life of the mortgage, if we can say that. Yeah. So in that 25 or 30 years amortization, you have terms. You could have 5 years, which are very popular, like fixed or variable, or you could have less than that, depending on the objectives. You could have 4, 3, 2, and even 1 year term. After that 1 year or 3 year or 5 year term, you need to renew the mortgage. And at that point, you can choose another term based on the new objectives that you could have. So if you want to sell the property, maybe you choose 1 year, or maybe the variable rate, because it will generate much less penalty if you break that mortgage before the deadline, before the end of the term. So those are the terms that you're asking for.
Yeah, so I think we've pretty much gone full circle. We've looked at everything that we wanted to look at in terms of planning for a mortgage. So this was mortgage planning. Luca, I really want to thank you for having been with us today to give us all of your insight. And we definitely look forward to having another conversation, another glass of wine with you, with Jack, who is going to guide us, of course, through finance and wine, and I, who will guide you through residential real estate investments. So thank you so much for being with us. Your insight has been very, very valuable.
Thank you very much, Raluca.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you for the wine. It was wonderful. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
Okay, thank you so much for being with us. So until next time, this was Mortgage Planning. The next time we will be talking, Jack, what will we be talking about?
But we're going to be talking about something that I think everybody needs to talk about, is budgeting. Budgeting. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It means what's most important is how much money you keep. So budgeting is the process of understanding where your cash flow is coming from, how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, where it's going. And I think that's a conversation that more people need to be having. More people need to be going through that process. It's a very eye-opening experience. Most people shy away from it at the beginning. It's a little bit of a gut check. But I wear 2 hats: financial advisor, psychologist. I'm not actually a psychologist, but talking about money is getting people to really open up and understand what's going on with their money. Super exciting conversation. And I will be kind of leading that during our next chat. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. Have a good night.
Cheers, ladies. Always a pleasure. Thank you, Raluca. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.